Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Thank you. I mean, we really have a completely wild one to dig into today, don't we?
Absolutely. So, for everyone listening, today we are doing a massive, uncompromising deep dive into Bonaire.
Right, the famous diverse paradise.
Exactly. It's a small Dutch Caribbean island, and we have spent weeks gathering a huge stack of sources for this. I mean, we're talking on-the-ground travel audits, official tourism pricing matrices, macro cost of living indexes for the region, really just the whole nine yards.
Yeah, and the mission today is entirely objective. We need to figure out exactly who gets real tangible value out of a trip to this specific island.
Right.
And on the flip side, who is going to get taken for an absolute logistical and financial ride because of, hidden cost stacking and totally mismatched expectations.
Totally. And right up front, I have to say this to the listeners. If you're planning a trip and want the honest, is it worth it verdict before you book, follow this show on Spotify or Apple. Okay, let's unpack this because the core tension of this entire deep dive, the thread running through every single spreadsheet we looked at, is that Bonaire's value proposition is incredibly fragile.
Fragile is the perfect word for it.
That's right. It is not a guaranteed good time for everyone. It depends entirely on your willingness to, self-manage your existence while you're there.
Yeah, and that fragility is exactly what makes Bonaire such a fascinating case study in modern global travel. The contrarian hook we really need to start with today is this deeply entrenched myth.
The cheap diving myth.
Exactly. People assume Bonaire is automatically a good value destination just because its headline feature, which is the shore diving, can be done cheaply.
You see this everywhere. Like any travel forum or Reddit thread about scuba diving, someone always chimes in, oh, just go to Bonaire. You don't need to pay for a dive boat. You just walk right off the beach. So it's like the ultimate budget vacation.
And that is a complete fundamental misunderstanding of how the island's economy actually works. I mean, it can offer exceptional value, sure, but only for a very, very specific type of traveler.
Who is it actually for then?
It is designed for the person who is going to utilize that underwater reef literally every single day. The traveler who rents a vehicle sensibly, who is totally willing to go to a local grocery store and cook a significant portion of their own meals, right?
Yeah.
And who fundamentally treats the trip as a rugged, nature-focused holiday.
Right. And if you deviate from that specific profile, even a little bit, the value equation it completely falls apart.
It shatters. It becomes exceptionally weak value for anyone looking for broad cosmopolitan restaurant choices or massive duty-free shopping districts.
Or like late-night beach bars with huge sound systems.
Exactly. Or the effortless ease of an all-inclusive resort. It's honestly even a bad deal for someone who wants daily sightseeing that doesn't involve getting physically wet.
Which is wild to think about for a Caribbean island.
It is, but to understand why it's so uncompromising, we have to look at the geography and the physical access. So Bonaire is a Dutch Caribbean island. It's the B in the famous ABC Islands, right? Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao.
Right, right.
You fly into Flamingo Airport, which is officially Bonaire International Airport. Geographically, it's on the southern side of the island, and it is incredibly close to civilization, like just about 10 minutes by car from downtown Kralendijk, which is the main colorful town there.
Which, if you're just looking at a map or reading a brochure, sounds super convenient. You think, great, 10 minutes to downtown, I'll grab my bags and I'm practically in my hotel.
Well, it is convenient in terms of pure proximity, and the flight access is actually significantly better than you might expect for such a specialized island.
What do the routes look like?
Our sources show robust direct routes from major hubs like Amsterdam, Houston, Newark, Miami, and Atlanta. And there are seasonal direct links from Toronto, too. Plus, the constant regional puddle jumper flights to the other ABC islands.
Okay, so it's accessible.
It is. But here is the critical caveat that travelers ignore at their own peril. Better access does not mean cheap access. The data on airfare is pretty sobering.
Hit me with the numbers.
High season round trips out of Amsterdam, for example, sit anywhere from $900 to $1,400.
Wow, just for the flight.
Just for the flight. And if you look at North American hubs, broad vacation guides put low season flights around $500 to $800. But once you cross into the high season, you are consistently looking at tickets above $1,000 for almost all major international hubs.
That is steep. And those baseline costs instantly set the stakes for the whole trip. I mean, if you're a family of four dropping $4,000 just to get your bodies onto the tarmac, you were already deeply invested.
You absolutely are.
Which brings us to a concept our sources were very clear on. We're calling it the skip-if rule. Listeners, literally write this down. Skip Bonaire entirely if your ideal Caribbean holiday is resort first, nightlife heavy, or transport light. Just cross it off the list.
Yeah, don't even bother.
Because Bonaire aggressively demands that you, the traveler, take total control of your environment. It's a strictly self-managed vacation.
Precisely. Let's really analyze that, the deep psychological difference between a managed vacation and a self-managed one, because this is where so many people completely ruin their own trips.
Okay, break that down.
A managed vacation is your classic all-inclusive resort in Punta Cana, or like a mega cruise ship out of Miami. You pay one large upfront fee, and from the moment you arrive, every single logistical decision is either made for you or it's heavily facilitated by staff.
Right, someone else is pouring the drinks.
Exactly. The transport is a branded shuttle waiting at the curb with the air conditioning running. The excursions are organized at a mahogany desk in the lobby. You just point at a brochure, hand over your room key, and you surrender your executive function. In exchange, you get relaxation.
And Bonaire is the polar opposite of that.
The absolute antithesis. Bonaire demands executive function from its visitors every single day.
Oh, man, yeah.
You have to actively navigate online portals to pay your entry taxes before you arrive. You have to meticulously plan your groceries because the supermarkets aren't open 24/7.
Right, if you miss the window, you just don't have food.
Exactly. And you have to obsessively watch the daily wind conditions and tidal charts to know which side of the island is actually safe to swim on without, being swept out to sea.
It honestly reminds me of buying high-end DIY furniture. Like, Bonaire is this gorgeous, solid wood, heirloom quality bookshelf. The materials are stunning. But it comes delivered to your door in a heavy flat-pack box with a massive bag of loose screws and a really confusing instruction manual.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. It's only a good deal if you actually enjoy putting it together.
Yeah.
If you inherently enjoy the driving, the route planning, hauling your own gear. But if you just want to sit on a finished couch with a cocktail in your hand, being catered to, you are going to be absolutely miserable staring at all those loose pieces of wood on the floor.
That is highly accurate. The physical and mental effort you expend is literally part of the cost of the trip. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, there is a massive, pervasive misconception in travel that a quiet destination is naturally a cheap destination.
Oh, totally. People think, oh, it's undeveloped, no mega resort, so it must cost pennies.
Exactly. But economically, quiet means something entirely different. It usually means a total lack of economies of scale.
Yeah.
There is less competition among local vendors. There are no bulk all-inclusive deals negotiating cheap food prices for thousands of people. There's no subsidized public bus network running up and down the coast. Fewer high-volume airline routes. On Bonaire, you are fundamentally paying a massive premium for that quiet. And the deliberate lack of massive tourist infrastructure means you have to physically and financially build the infrastructure of your own trip yourself.
Which basically means knowing exactly how you travel entirely dictates when you should go. Because the booking windows here are incredibly volatile. Let's look at the calendar, right? From December to May, you have the dry season.
The undisputed peak time to be on the island.
Yeah, best weather, easiest planning, lowest risk of rain. But logically, that's also when everyone from North America and Northern Europe is desperately fleeing the winter snow.
Yes, and that mass exodus from the cold is exactly when we see those peak flight and hotel pressures hit their absolute maximum. Those Amsterdam flights hitting the $1,400 mark. That completely changes the fundamental value calculation for a family or a couple.
Absolutely. If your flights double in price, your daily budget is instantly under severe strain.
Right. And then, as we move out of the peak, you enter the summer block, June, July, and August. Our travel audits show this window is highly complicated, particularly for families.
Why families specifically?
Because families are often rigidly locked into these exact months due to school holidays. They don't have the flexibility to just, go in February. But during the summer, the island's physical environment shifts dramatically.
It's hotter, right.
Significantly hotter. The famous trade winds, which usually provide this wonderful natural cooling effect, they often die down in August. Without that wind, the heat index spikes.
Oh, that sounds rough.
It is. Suddenly, having reliable, high BTU air conditioning in your rental property is absolutely non-negotiable. If you book a cheap, naturally ventilated eco-lodge in August, you are not going to sleep for a week.
That sounds absolutely brutal. Okay, so then there's the shoulder and low season, which covers September, October, and November. Looking at the raw pricing data, this is definitely cheaper, but the sources are very clear that it is highly weather dependent.
Very much so.
Now, Bonaire sits geographically outside the main Caribbean hurricane belt, which they use as a huge marketing point.
Yeah.
It's great because you don't have that looming anxiety of a Category 5 storm making a direct hit, but rough seas generated by storms hundreds of miles away can still completely ruin the core activities.
Exactly. We really have to analyze the false economy of the low season here because it's a trap so many budget-conscious travelers fall into.
Walk us through that.
Well, it is so tempting to look at a pricing calendar, see a deeply discounted room rate in late September, and think you've brilliantly outsmarted the travel industry.
Wait, I'm saving a fortune.
Right. But imagine this entirely realistic scenario. You book a cheap week in late September, you save maybe $300 or $400 on your accommodation. But because it's the hotter, stagnant time of year, your budget room doesn't have great AC, you aren't sleeping well,
You're already cranky.
you're irritable, and your entire reason for going on this trip was to do one big, expensive boat dive to a very specific outer reef. But a tropical depression forms 300 miles north near Puerto Rico.
Oh, no.
It never hits Bonaire, but it churns up the ocean swell. The dive operator cancels your boat trip due to unsafe, rough seas. You can't safely enter the water. That quote-unquote cheap week you booked just became a total disaster, both financially and emotionally, because the environment didn't cooperate with your spreadsheet.
It's the ultimate gamble. You are betting your entire vacation on the barometric pressure staying stable. Let's pivot and talk about crowds, too, because the way crowding works on Bonaire is really weird.
It's very localized, yeah.
Right. Like, if you've been to the massive hotel strips in Aruba or Cancun, you know what a crowded beach looks like. Just thousands of loungers packed together.
Yeah.
Bonaire isn't crowded like that. The sources highlight very specific structural choke points.
Yes.
You'll hit intense bottlenecks in downtown Kralendijk, especially along the waterfront promenade near the cruise pier.
The cruise ship dynamic is critical to understand here. The central area of Kralendijk is historically small and incredibly compact. I mean, it was not built for mass transit.
Right.
So, if a large cruise ship docks for the day and 2,000 passengers suddenly disembark and flood a town that only has a few main streets, the entire center of gravity shifts. The town suddenly feels overwhelmingly packed.
I can imagine.
It becomes difficult to get a table for lunch, difficult to browse the shops, and the local infrastructure just groans under the weight of that temporary population spike.
And outside of town, the bottlenecks are super geographic. There's the southern dive road corridor heading down towards Salt Pier. It's just a two-lane road. And if everyone decides to dive the southern sites on the exact same morning, you get literal traffic jams of pickup trucks.
Absolutely.
Then there's Tamo Beach, right near the airport. And maybe the most notorious is Lank Bay around the Sorbonne area. This is a massive, shallow bay famous for windsurfing. But when the wind is perfectly dialed in, you've got professional windsurfers, amateur students, and regular beachgoers, all clashing in the exact same limited stretch of shallow water.
And those specific choke points dictate exactly how different types of travelers need to manage their personal logistics. Divers, for instance, absolutely must book their rental trucks and hotel rooms months in advance, especially from December to April.
Because there's a limited supply.
Exactly. The supply of specialized dive trucks is finite. And divers can't just book any generic hotel room on Expedia. They have to meticulously scrutinize the property. Does it have dedicated rinse tanks? Does it have secure ventilated gear lockers?
Right, somewhere to hang a wetsuit.
Exactly. Does it have a shaded patio area where thick neoprene can actually dry? If not, the room is completely useless to them.
What about the other traveler types? What are the logistics?
Families, meanwhile, have to prioritize full kitchens above all else because feeding 4 people 3 meals a day at Bonaire restaurant prices will destroy a budget in 48 hours.
Yeah, that math doesn't work.
Backpackers face a unique challenge. They cannot simply show up on the island, walk out of the airport, and improvise, hoping to find a cheap hostel. Budget beds are incredibly scarce and get booked out by long-term windsurfers.
Damn, the luxury travelers.
They have a different mandate. They have to book early to secure the very few high-end properties that prioritize deep quiet and exclusivity over the mega resort amenities they might be used to elsewhere.
Okay, I want to pose a theoretical question based on all this. We've talked about the best months for weather and the worst months for heat. But structurally, what is the absolute worst time to book a trip to Bonaire?
What's fascinating here is that the worst time to book isn't a specific month on the calendar at all.
Okay.
It's any week where you pay peak premium rates for a trip style that Bonaire physically, geographically, and culturally cannot deliver.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Paying high season prices for a vacation where you expect extensive non-water sightseeing, high-end mall shopping, and vibrant nightclubs is the true bad booking window. It doesn't matter if the weather is a perfect 82 degrees in mid-February. If you aren't getting into the water to utilize the reef, you are drastically overpaying for the island's headline value.
You are paying for a ski resort and never putting on skis.
That is exactly it.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. But here is the reality check. No matter what month you book, no matter what kind of traveler you are, everyone faces the exact same logistical hurdles the absolute minute they step off the plane.
The arrival gauntlet.
Right, let's talk about those first impressions. So you land at Flamingo Airport, like I said, small-scale airport, nice open-air Caribbean feel, but boom, right out of the gate, instant friction, the $75 visitor entry tax.
That arrival friction is a defining, unavoidable feature of the Bonaire experience. The official tourism boards heavily urge travelers to pay this $75 tax online in advance via a digital portal.
So they give you a QR code.
Yes, they generate a QR code that you're supposed to save to your phone. The goal is to avoid massive queues at the immigration hall. But if you step off a 9-hour flight, tired, dehydrated, and you haven't handled this administrative paperwork,
You're sent to the penalty line.
you're sent to a payment line, you lose all your momentum, your patience evaporates, and you haven't even reached the rental car counter yet.
And speaking of the rental car counter, let's transition into transport because the sources we audited are definitive, unanimous, and honestly aggressive on this point.
Right.
Car rentals on Bonaire are essentially mandatory.
Mandatory.
Completely. Let me repeat that for everyone. Mandatory.
Uh,
There is zero, literally zero tourist-facing public transport. No subway, no reliable bus loop that hits the beaches, no train.
Nothing.
You are looking at rental costs ranging from $35 a day for a tiny, bare-bones compact car at the very low end, all the way up to $120 a day or more for a rugged, dual-cab pickup truck. And if you are a diver, you actually need that expensive pickup truck, right?
Yes, you do, because you are hauling heavy, wet metal scuba tanks every day, and they will absolutely ruin the interior of a standard sedan.
But wait, what about taxis?
Taxis do exist, but they really only function for simple point-to-point central transfers, like going from the airport to a hotel in Kralendijk or taking a taxi to dinner if you plan to drink. They are not designed, nor are they priced, for daily island exploration or beach hopping.
Right, that would bankrupt you.
Exactly. And this lack of alternative transport introduces a massive psychological barrier that I like to call arrival friction.
Define arrival friction for us in this context.
Arrival friction is the amount of work you have to do before you can actually relax. Your vacation on Bonaire does not start when the plane's wheels touch down. It doesn't start when you grab your suitcase off the carousel.
When does it start?
Your vacation only begins after the $75 entry tax is verified, after the lengthy rental car contract is signed and the vehicle is meticulously inspected for existing dents, after the completely separate nature fee is sorted out online, which we will definitely discuss later.
Oh, yes, we will.
And after you've made your first inevitable exhausting stop at the grocery store to buy toilet paper, coffee, and breakfast for the next morning. Only after you have completed that gauntlet, driven to your rental, and unpacked the groceries are you actually on holiday.
If you're listening to this on your commute right now, you're probably looking at a map of Bonaire on your phone and thinking, wait a minute, I walk 2 miles to the subway every day. I can definitely walk a mile in Bonaire to save $120 a day.
Everyone thinks that.
Right. Because looking at the map, downtown Kralendijk, the southern neighborhood of Belnum, the northern area of Hato, and the airport, they all look incredibly close together. It looks like a tight little cluster. Why can't I just tough it out? Why can't I skip the rental car and just walk or rent a simple bicycle everywhere?
It is the single most common and most disastrous mistake first-time visitors make. It happens constantly.
Why is it so bad?
Because you are looking at a two-dimensional Google map while sitting in a climate-controlled room, the physical reality on the ground is aggressively different. Imagine hauling 30 to 40 pounds of wet, dripping, cumbersome dive gear. Your fins, BCD, regulator, mask, weights. Now imagine trying to walk 2 miles with that gear.
Ugh, miserable.
Now add in the oppressive, radiant Caribbean heat and the intense, direct sun exposure.
Okay, so it's hot and heavy during the day, but what about at night? What if I just want to walk to dinner?
That brings up the infrastructure problem. Many of these connecting roads between neighborhoods are entirely unlit at night, pitch black. And there is a severe, almost total lack of safe, paved sidewalks outside of the immediate downtown core.
So you're just on the road.
You are forced to walk on the shoulder of a dark road while pickup trucks whiz past you. The physical distances are short for an internal combustion engine, yes, but they are brutal, exhausting, and frankly unsafe for a pedestrian carrying heavy equipment, especially after dark. The heat alone will break your resolve by day 2. You'll surrender and go back to the airport to beg for a rental car, but by then, they might all be sold out.
That paints a painfully clear picture. You simply cannot outwalk the environment of Bonaire. It will win.
It always wins.
And this total, unavoidable dependency on a rental car completely dictates the strategy of where you should actually choose to sleep.
Yeah.
Because you are entirely dependent on that truck to survive, your choice of hotel isn't about aesthetics anymore. It's a logistical base camp. Let's break down the accommodation strategies by traveler type, starting with the backpacker.
For the backpacker, the data shows they're looking at roughly $50 to $80 a night for a basic bed. To find this pricing, they need to look in specific areas, either on the fringes of Kralendijk, in the inland historic town of Rincon, or on the deep inland edges of the island.
But there's a trap there, right?
A massive, budget-destroying trade-off. Securing a cheap bed is useless if the property lacks a communal kitchen or if they do not have access to a shared rental car with other travelers.
So if they save $30 a night.
Right, if they save $30 a night staying inland, but they are forced to eat every single meal at a restaurant because they can't cook, and they have to pay for expensive taxis because they can't walk to the beach, their entire budget is instantly destroyed. The cheap room is a financial trap.
Got it. Then we step up to the mid-range traveler. The audit data puts this tier at about $150 to $250 a night. Where should they be looking?
Neighborhoods like Kralendijk, Hado to the north, or Belnum to the south. The sources specifically name properties like the Divi Flamingo Beach Resort and Casino in Kralendijk, or the Blues Resort.
And what's their priority?
The focus here isn't just about finding a room with a pretty ocean view or high thread count sheets. The priority is logistics, secure parking for the truck, and crucially, having a dedicated, specialized gear rinsing station.
Let's explain why that rinse station is so vital for anyone who hasn't dived before.
Yeah, if you aren't a diver, you might not realize that a scuba regulator, the device you actually breathe through, can easily cost between $800 and $1,500.
Not cheap.
No. And ocean saltwater is incredibly corrosive. When it dries, the salt forms microscopic, razor-sharp crystals. If you don't soak that expensive equipment in fresh water immediately after a dive, those salt crystals will literally shred the rubber O-rings and internal valves, causing your gear to leak or fail at 60 feet underwater.
And a hotel bathtub just doesn't cut it.
A bathtub is not sufficient. You need a deep, dedicated rinse tank. For mid-range travelers, the accommodation is absolutely a logistical base camp. If your base camp cannot protect your life support equipment, it's a bad base camp, no matter how nice the pillows are. And they also need a breakfast kitchen, so they aren't forced to spend $20 on simple eggs and coffee every single morning at a cafe.
Makes total sense. Okay, families have an even tighter set of requirements.
Yeah.
They're looking at spending $220 to $400 a night.
Right.
Neighborhoods like Belnum are great for families who have rented a car because it puts them very close to the calmer southern beaches. Kralendijk is good because of the proximity to the major grocery stores, but it can be noisy with the mopeds and the nightlife.
And then there's Sorobon.
Right, Sorobon is a popular option because of the shallow water, but it is very, very isolated on the eastern side of the island. A family absolutely must secure a property with ample space, a full kitchen, and ideally, a private pool to keep the kids entertained when they aren't at the beach.
The geographic isolation of Sorobon is a perfect example of why location is everything. Imagine a family staying out in a beautiful villa in Sorobon. It's stunning during the day, right near the windsurfing action at Lac Bay. But there's almost no real dinner variety out there.
So when everyone is starving at 6 p.m.
Exactly. The kids are exhausted, sunburned, and hungry. You do not want to be forced into a long, dark 20-minute drive back into Kralendijk just to find a reasonably priced family meal and then have to drive back in the dark. Choosing the wrong location creates massive daily friction for parents.
Wait, I want to look at the top end of the spectrum here, the luxury tier. The sources show this ranging from $350 to $700 a night. They mention boutique places like Sorobon Luxury Beach Resort and Sorobon Bay Hotel.
Yes.
But looking at these prices, Half a grand, sometimes almost $1,000 a night with taxes. Why wouldn't a massive global developer just swoop in and build a towering 500-room Aruba-style mega resort with 10 infinity pools to cater to these rich tourists? Economically, if people are willing to pay $700 a night, why am I paying that much just to sit in a quiet boutique hotel?
That is the ultimate paradox of luxury on Bonaire. The reason mega resorts don't exist here is a mix of strict local environmental zoning laws protecting the reef and the physical reality that Bonaire lacks the miles of deep, powdery sand required to anchor a massive resort.
So what are you actually buying?
The luxury you are paying for is entirely different. Picture the high net worth traveler who drops $700 a night, expecting the classic luxury experience. They expect to walk out of their grand lobby into a vibrant street full of high-end nightclubs, designer boutiques, and bustling VIP energy.
Like South Beach or something.
Right. Instead, they find themselves paying top dollar for total, absolute, unyielding silence at an island that essentially goes to sleep at 9:30 p.m. The luxury on Bonaire is exclusivity. It is having a private dive guide. It is having a pristine, quiet villa where you hear nothing but the wind.
So it's about managing expectations.
Completely. If you want quiet exclusivity, it's perfect. If you want VIP bottle service and booming nightlife, you will be profoundly disappointed and feel like you've been robbed.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because whether you are a backpacker in a $50 room or a luxury traveler in a $700 villa, every single tier we just discussed emphasized the absolute necessity of having a kitchen.
Hence, every single one.
And the reason you desperately need a kitchen brings us to the shocking, inescapable cost of food. When you realize that simply skipping a bottle of water at a restaurant and choosing to make your own sandwich for lunch fundamentally shifts the affordability of the entire island, you start to see the matrix of how Bonaire really works.
It is the single biggest pivot point in a traveler's budget. You can control your room cost. You can split a car rental. But you cannot avoid eating.
You gotta eat.
The baseline economic reality that every traveler must accept is that daily living costs on Bonaire are, on average, about 20% higher than in the mainland Netherlands. And the reason for this is entirely logistical. Think about the geography. This is a small, arid, desert-like island in the southern Caribbean. Very little food is grown locally. Almost every single calorie you consume arrives on a massive container ship.
Trace that supply chain for us. How does, like, an apple or a block of cheese actually get there?
Let's take a block of standard Gouda cheese. It is produced in a factory in the Netherlands. It is loaded onto a refrigerated truck, driven to the port of Rotterdam, loaded into a refrigerated shipping container, and put on a cargo ship. That ship burns thousands of gallons of fuel crossing the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, so massive transport costs.
Right. It docks in Bonaire. The container is unloaded, put on another truck, and driven to the supermarket, where it is kept in a massive air-conditioned display case powered by island electricity, which is also incredibly expensive to generate. Those long supply chains, the fuel surcharges, the constant refrigeration costs, all of that overhead is passed directly, dollar for dollar, onto the consumer.
The audits name the major supermarkets where you will be shopping. Van den Queel Supermarket, Warehouse Bonaire, and Zungkong Supermarket. And if you walk into Van den Queel, it is wild. It looks exactly like an Albert Heijn supermarket in Amsterdam.
It really does.
The branding is the same, the products are the same Dutch brands, but the price tag hits you like a freight train because of that 20% oceanic markup. And the restaurant pricing is where you really see the pain.
Let's hear the numbers.
Listen to these. A standard cup of coffee is $3 to $5. A local beer is $5 to $7. A simple local meal, maybe some stoba, which is a hearty local stew with funchi, will run you $10 to $20 at a casual spot. A standard casual restaurant meal is $20 to $30. And a mid-range dinner for two is easily $40 to $60 before you even look at the cocktail menu or add a tip. Even a simple plastic bottle of water is $2 to $3.
Though it is absolutely crucial to note that the tap water on Bonaire is among the best in the world.
Oh, really?
Yes, it is perfectly, completely safe to drink. The island uses a highly advanced reverse osmosis plant to purify seawater, so that $2 to $3 for a bottle of water is an entirely avoidable tourist tax. If you just carry a reusable Yeti or Nalgene bottle and fill it at the tap, you save massive amounts of money and, help the environment.
That is a huge tip.
Yeah.
But looking at the grocery budgeting, it requires real daily discipline. The data outlines realistic per-person grocery costs if you are staying in an apartment and cooking.
What's the breakdown?
It's $6 to $9 for breakfast items like eggs and toast, $8 to $14 to assemble a DIY lunch of cold cuts and fruit, $12 to $20 for simple dinner ingredients like pasta and sauce, and $5 to $9 for basic snacks.
I want the listeners to really think about that dinner ingredient cost. $12 to $20 per person just to buy the raw ingredients to cook your own meal.
It's insane.
It is, but that's because you are buying imported Dutch cheese, imported Italian pasta sauce, and imported South American produce. But even with those shockingly high grocery prices, cooking your own food still undercuts the restaurant prices massively over a 7-day trip.
Absolutely. Now, before we hit the daily budgets, there are some vital etiquette rules to cover that the audits highlighted. Tipping is a factor. A 10 to 15% tip is generally expected in restaurants where a service charge isn't always included in the bill. But more importantly, there are hard, unwritten cultural rules about the environment and local businesses.
Yes. For example, do not use a dive shop's rinse tanks or gear lockers unless you are actively paying them for air fills or guided dives. They are not public utilities.
Seems like common sense, but I guess people do it.
All the time. Also, do not block the narrow shore entry points at dive sites while you are slowly, clumsily putting on your fins in the shallow water. People need to exit the water safely. And whatever you do, under absolutely any circumstances, do not touch, stand on, or kick the coral reef.
Those etiquette rules speak to the deeply ingrained culture of the island. It's a place that deeply respects self-reliance and environmental preservation. If you behave like an entitled, oblivious tourist, expecting local shop owners to clean up your gear, or if you ignore the profound fragility of the reef ecosystem, you will face incredible friction from the locals. You will be told off.
Definitely.
So when we take all of these disparate elements, the expensive international flights, the absolute necessity of a room with a kitchen, the mandatory truck rental, the fees, and the pricey imported cheese, what does the daily math actually look like when you put it all into a spreadsheet? Let's break down the daily budget, and we're going to look at the exact figures provided in the audits.
Let's start at the bottom with the backpacker tier. The absolute minimum daily budget to survive on Bonaire is $105 to $160 per day. Let me break that down.
Go for it.
That includes $50 to $80 for the room. It includes $25 to $40 for food. And to be clear, at that price point, they are entirely cooking their own meals in a communal hostel kitchen, eating peanut butter sandwiches and cheap pasta.
Right.
It includes $20 to $45 for their share of transport. It includes $6 to $15 for cheap activities like snorkeling after paying the mandatory nature fee. And it leaves a tiny, precarious buffer of $10 to $20.
That is tight.
Very tight. But the massive looming danger here is the solo car rental. If a backpacker arrives solo and cannot find someone at their hostel to share the cost of a rental car, that daily transport cost rockets up by $40 or $50 a day, and the budget is utterly irreparably ruined.
Next up is the mid-range traveler. The data puts this at $220 to $340 a day per person. The room is $90 to $160 per person, assuming 2 people are sharing a nice apartment. Food is $55 to $90 a day, which allows for cooking breakfast and lunch, and maybe eating a modest dinner out.
Okay, that's more breathing room.
Yeah. Transport is $25 to $70, representing their half of a solid rental truck. Activities are budgeted at $25 to $75, covering daily shore diving airfills and park access. And they have a healthier buffer of $25 to $45. Our sources emphasize heavily that this specific budget band is the island's strongest value proposition. This is where the magic happens on Bonaire.
It truly is the sweet spot. A mid-range traveler has enough budget flexibility to absorb the high fixed costs, the truck, the taxes, the groceries, without constant stress. But simultaneously, they are maximizing the island's free natural assets. They are doing 3 shore dives a day for the cost of a $10 tank of compressed air, which massively offsets the overall cost of the trip compared to an island where every dive requires a $120 boat ticket.
Right. Now let's talk about the family budget. Let's assume 2 adults and 2 kids. Parents, brace yourselves. You are looking at $520 to $780 per day before you factor in the massive cost of 4 international flights. Yeah. The family room, or villa, is $220 to $400 a night. Food is $140 to $220 a day, and that requires cooking breakfast and some dinners at home. Transport is $55 to $140 because you need a larger, comfortable SUV or double-cab truck. Activities are $60 to $140 to keep everyone entertained, and the buffer is $45 to $80.
But wait, don't forget the tax.
Oh, right. Here is the crucial, painful tax detail that will make your wallet cry the moment you land. The $75 visitor entry tax applies to all adults and teens aged 13 and older.
Yeah.
Kids 12 and under pay a reduced rate of $10. So a family of 4 with 2 teenagers is paying $300 digitally before they are legally allowed to leave the airport terminal.
That $300 landing fee sets a very heavy, serious tone for a family vacation. It forces parents to immediately start mentally justifying the expense the moment they arrive. We just spent $300 to walk through a door, we better have the best time ever. That pressure can create tension.
Then we have the luxury budget. If you want the high-end experience, you need $650 to $1,100 a day. The luxury room or private villa is $350 to $700. Food is $160 to $300, assuming you're eating at the finest restaurants like Brass Boar. Transport is $80 to $160 for a premium vehicle. Activities are $100 to $250, covering things like privately chartered boat dives or private windsurfing lessons. And the luxury buffer is $75 to $150.
And finally, the audits provided comprehensive data for the digital nomad who is looking at a month-long stay. They need a baseline of $3,000 to $4,800 a month.
Okay, let's hear that monthly breakdown.
Rent for a long-term apartment ranges from $1,400 to $2,600. Monthly food is $650 to $1,100. Transport is a massive, painful $700 to $1,400 because they have to secure a long-term car lease.
That transport cost is brutal.
It really is. The initial work setup, like securing a reliable internet package or a desk, is $80 to $180. Monthly activities are $250 to $600. The buffer is $300 to $700. The sources explicitly note an average monthly baseline of $3,631 to live comfortably. So, to be very clear, Bonaire is not a cheap work-from-the-beach haven like you might find in Bali or Thailand. It is a premium European-priced jurisdiction in the Caribbean.
So what does this all mean? When you look at all these tiers laid out side by side, it becomes incredibly obvious that the fixed costs, specifically the non-negotiable government taxes and the mandatory car rental, create a hard, unbreakable floor on budgeting. You physically cannot scrape by on pennies here.
You really can't.
You can't just pitch a tent on a beach, forage for fruit, and hitchhike. The island's legal infrastructure and its geographic realities completely prevent it.
Exactly. And I want to dissect those buffer categories we mentioned across all 5 of the budgets. $10 here for a backpacker, $45 there for a family, $150 for luxury. That buffer is where insidious price creep destroys a traveler's financial peace of mind.
Why does that happen?
You think you've budgeted perfectly on your spreadsheet, but you forget that a heavy pickup truck burns significantly more expensive island gasoline when you are grinding up and down dirt roads in the national park.
Yeah.
You forget that the 15% tip adds up incredibly fast on a $60 dinner. You forget that regular sunscreen destroys the reef, so you are forced to buy expensive, specialized reef-safe sunscreen at the local pharmacy for $25 a bottle because you ran out. That buffer is the reality of island logistics slowly draining your wallet $5 at a time.
And those budgets only work. They only hold together without blowing up. If you manage to identify and avoid 3 incredibly specific, named traps that are famous for ruining travelers' trips on Bonaire. Let's dive into the logistics traps. Trap number 1 is what the travel audits call the cheap room, expensive wheels trap.
We touched on the fringes of this earlier with the backpackers, but it is insidious across all tiers. The mechanism of the trap is simple and psychological. A traveler wants to save money during the booking phase. They look at a map and they book a room 2 or 3 miles inland because it saves them $50 a night compared to an oceanfront property. They feel like a genius.
Until they actually get there.
Right. They fail to calculate the secondary consequences. That inland location mandates daily, constant driving for absolutely everything. Every single trip to a dive site, every quick run to the grocery store for milk, every dinner outing requires turning the key in the ignition. Suddenly, they are paying $120 daily for a heavy-duty truck, plus expensive gas, plus they are experiencing the mental fatigue of navigating dark, unlit dirt roads every single night after dinner.
So the $50 they saved on the room cost them $80 in transport and immense frustration. What is the fix for this trap?
The fix is to reframe your accounting. Always, always price your room and your car together as a single, indivisible unit in your spreadsheet. Don't separate them. If you want to run errands easily and walk to dinner, pay the premium for a room in Krellendijk and perhaps rent a cheaper, smaller car. If you want dive convenience, book a place in Hado near the reefs and pay for the truck. Do not treat accommodation and transport as disconnected line items.
That is great advice. Okay, trap number 2 is honestly just painful. It's the nature fee is not the tourist tax trap. Let me walk you through this scenario. You land, you pay your $75 visitor entry tax to the government, you grumble a bit, but you think, okay, fine, I've paid my dues to the island, I'm fully legal.
Yeah, you think you're done.
The next morning, you drive to a beautiful beach, you put on your snorkel, you wade into the water, and someone from the park authority taps you on the shoulder. They inform you that to actually touch the ocean water or to drive into the Washington Slagby National Park, you need to pay the Stinapa nature fee.
STINAPA stands for Stichting National Park in Bonaire. It is the National Parks Foundation. They are an NGO tasked with managing and protecting the incredibly fragile marine park that surrounds the entire island, as well as the land-based park in the north. They maintain the mooring buoys, they police the poachers, they protect the coral. Their fee is completely legally separate from the government's general entry tax. It costs $40 per calendar year.
Wait. I'm putting myself in the shoes of the listener right now. I already paid the government $75 just to walk out of the airport. Why on earth am I paying another $40 just to swim in the ocean? That feels like extortion.
The lived reality of this double hit is a massive psychological blow to tourists. Imagine a couple who has just paid $150 to enter the country. Now, the next morning, they are told they must pay another $80 just to legally look at a fish. If you didn't meticulously research and budget for this specific secondary fee, it absolutely feels like you were being extorted by hidden taxes.
So what's the fix?
The reality is, the STINAPA fee is the most crucial money you will spend. It is what keeps the reef alive. The fix here is radical acceptance. Treat both the $75 entry tax and the $40 nature fee as a single, mandatory $115 bundled tax in your budget before you ever even book the flights.
It's exactly like buying tickets to a major amusement park. You pay $75 at the main gate, you walk in, you hear the fun music, you smell the popcorn, you are so excited, and then you walk up to the biggest, best roller coaster in the park, and the ride attendant stops you and says, "Oh, sorry, the roller coasters cost an extra $40. It's infuriating if you aren't warned in advance.
Which brings us to trap number 3, and this raises an important question about how group dynamics and human relationships can completely fracture when you drag someone to a highly specialized destination that doesn't cater to their interests. Track 3 is known as the Dive Island Non-Diver Boredom Trap.
Oh man, reading the audits, this one is a literal relationship killer. The mechanism here is deeply unfair. Let's say a couple travels together. The partner, who is a certified scuba diver, is having the absolute time of their life. They're in paradise, they love the rugged shore entries, the total freedom of managing their own tanks, the incredible vibrant reefs right off the beach. They are thrilled.
While the other person,
But their partner, who does not dive, and perhaps doesn't even like snorkeling, is paying the exact same expensive fixed costs. The expensive airfare, the $75 entry tax, they're half of the expensive room. But they are extracting zero of the underwater value. They are stuck on land, baking in the heat, getting incredibly bored by the fact that there are no massive shopping malls, no sprawling casino resorts, and very limited nightlife.
the disparity in perceived value between those two people is massive. The diver thinks Bonaire is the greatest bargain on planet Earth because they are doing world-class dives for $10 a tank. The non-diver thinks Bonaire is a barren, expensive, boring rock with terrible rocky beaches.
How do you fix that?
The fix here requires extreme proactive communication and planning. If you are the diver bringing a non-diver, you have to build out robust, engaging non-water days. You have to rent a comfortable car and drive to the historic town of Rincon. You have to go explore the massive, colorful salt pans in the south. You have to spend time at the flamingo sanctuaries. And if you honestly look at those land-based activities and realize your partner will still be miserable and bored,
Then what?
the hard truth is you should have compromised and booked a trip to Curacao instead.
And beyond the financial traps and the boredom traps, there are physical and practical realities on the ground the travelers just assume will be exactly like back home. Let's talk about safety, solo travel, and comfort. First, the good news up front. Violent crime risk is extremely low on Bonaire. You are not worrying about the things you might worry about in a major global city.
Yes, the risk hierarchy here is fundamentally different. It is not about violent crime panic. The real, tangible threats to your vacation are much more mundane, but they are highly disruptive. It's petty pickpocketing in crowded areas during cruise ship days. It's car burglaries.
Let's talk about the rental car rule, because that blew my mind.
Specifically, there is a cardinal unbreakable rule on Bonaire regarding rental cars.
Mm.
You never, ever lock your valuables in your truck while you are at a remote beach diving. In fact, the rule is you roll the windows down, you leave the glove box open, and you leave the doors completely unlocked.
Which is wild to wrap your head around. It goes against every instinct you have as an adult. Like, leave your car completely open and vulnerable to protect it.
It makes perfect logical sense in context, though. If you lock the doors, a thief walking the beach will assume there is something valuable inside, like a camera or a wallet. They will smash the window to check. And your rental insurance often does not cover glass damage. So you leave the truck empty and open so the thief can look inside, see there is nothing but an old towel, and walk away without breaking your window.
That is so counterintuitive, but brilliant. But the safety hazards go beyond petty theft, right?
Definitely. The sources explicitly warn about massive wild donkeys wandering into the middle of unlit roads at night. They warn about incredibly rough, potholed dirt roads in the national park that can destroy a vehicle's suspension. They warn about severe sun exposure, rapid dehydration because the trade winds mask how much you were sweating, and rough sea conditions that can throw you against sharp coral.
For solo female travelers, the consensus in the audits is that the island is generally very comfortable and safe. The management strategy isn't about avoiding predators. It's just basic, universal diligence. Manage your transport reliably. Don't walk down pitch black, unlit dirt roads at 2 a.m., and don't leave your expensive iPhone visible on the passenger seat while you pump gas.
Right.
The slower, relaxed pace of the island is wonderful, but it does mean there are significantly fewer bystanders around in quiet, remote areas if you happen to need help or blow a tire.
What is most critical here is a concept I call assumption risk. The danger on Bonaire isn't a street hustler running a sophisticated con game on you. The danger is your own internalized assumptions about how the world works.
Explain that. What is assumption risk?
Travelers constantly superimpose their expectations of a generic, highly stylized Caribbean island onto the unyielding reality of Bonaire, and they get burned. Our brains have been conditioned by Instagram and Sandals resort commercials to view the entire Caribbean as a monolith of white sand and easy living.
Right. Everyone expects a postcard.
So, you assume your standard premium credit card car insurance will cover undercarriage damage from a deeply rutted dirt road in Washington's Slagby Park. It almost never does. You assume the ocean will always be glass calm and perfectly safe for your nervous first-time snorkeling partner. It isn't. The windward side of the island has deadly currents. You assume a small island means cheap taxis are waiting on every corner to take you home after a few drinks. They aren't. When nature or the island's limited infrastructure refuses to magically comply with your imported expectations, your trip falls apart. The risk is your own lack of research.
So if you do the research, if you manage the assumption risk, accept the environmental hazards, cheerfully pay all the stacked Stenopod government fees, and survive driving past the donkeys on the unlit roads, what is the actual reward? What's the payoff? And conversely, what are the brutal disappointments for the people who didn't listen to this deep dive? Let's talk about the best moments and the honest disappointments. Let's start with the absolute highs.
The best moments on Bonaire are undeniably earned by preparation, and they center entirely around the water. The shore diving is the absolute, undisputed headline. Let's explain the mechanics of why it's so good. Geologically, Bonaire is essentially the peak of an underwater mountain.
Okay, so it drops off fast.
Exactly. It lacks a wide, shallow continental shelf. This means the coral reef isn't a mile offshore. It begins almost immediately. The seafloor gently slopes and then suddenly drops off into a stunning coral wall just 30 feet from the beach. Once you've paid that Stein-up nature fee, the ability to simply load 2 metal tanks into the back of your dusty truck, drive down the coastal road, spot a yellow rock painted with a dike site name, pull over, gear up on the tailgate, and swim out to a pristine, world-class reef entirely on your own schedule. It is unparalleled.
It sounds incredible.
It completely beats the rigid, expensive boat dependency you find on islands like Aruba or the Caymans.
And for the non-divers who do love the water, Lac Vey and Sorobon offer some of the most consistent, world-class windsurfing conditions on the planet because the geography funnels the trade winds perfectly over waist-deep water. And on land, Washington's Slagby National Park in the north is this incredible, rugged, desert-like adventure, full of iguanas and massive cacti, though it absolutely demands a high-clearance vehicle and plenty of drinking water. And you do have beautiful cultural and visual sites, like the historic town of Rincon, the massive, surreal, bright pink salt pans in the south, and the flamingo spotting areas.
But as an objective audit, we have to be brutally honest about the disappointments. The beaches on Bonaire are not the soft, powdery, white sand expanses you see in typical Caribbean marketing brochures. They just aren't.
What are they like then?
Much of the coastline is composed of coral rubble, sharp limestone rocks, and fossilized coral known as iron shore, which looks like jagged, gray-black daggers. If you try to walk on it barefoot, it will shred your feet. You absolutely need hard-soled dive booties. Furthermore, the nightlife is highly limited. Shopping is minimal, and the service industry operates strictly on island time, which means it is wonderfully relaxed, but relaxed usually translates to very slow service by North American standards.
The visual contrast between expectation and reality is so sharp here. Picture the ultimate successful Bonaire traveler. They pull their dusty rental truck right up to the ocean's edge. They sit on the tailgate, laughing, locking their dive booties into their fins. They walk carefully over the crunchy, sharp coral rubble, and they drop into 70-degree, crystal-clear water, immediately surrounded by sea turtles on a world-class reef. For them, it is pure magic. Now contrast that. Picture the traveler who got duped by a highly cropped, heavily filtered Instagram photo. They arrive at the same beach in a designer swimsuit, expecting a sprawling sandy expanse with a shaded cabana lounger and a waiter bringing them a cocktail. Instead, they find themselves standing precariously on sharp iron shore rocks, blistering in the relentless wind, sweating profusely, with no waiter in sight and no shade to hide under.
Social media is incredibly guilty of hiding the intense heat, the relentless wind, and the sharp coral rubble. The best, most rewarding version of Bonaire requires you to be an active, resilient participant in your own vacation, not a passive consumer of luxury.
And if that passive luxury sounds like exactly what you actually want, if you were listening to this and saying, I just want the cabana and the cocktail, you need to look at the neighboring islands immediately. Which brings us to alternatives. If Bonaire's required daily effort is simply too high for you, where do you go?
If you look at the region, alternative one is Curacao. You should confidently choose Curacao if you are traveling with a mixed group. If you have a group that includes hardcore divers, non-divers, foodies who want 50 different restaurant choices, people who want to wander around a vibrant, historic, European-feeling city with street art, or anyone who wants a discernible pulse and energy after sunset, Curacao is the answer.
How does it compare on cost?
It shares those deep Dutch Caribbean cultural links with Bonaire. It has far better sandy beaches, and it still has very, very good diving. Cost-wise, the difference can swing anywhere from $0 to $500 per person over a week compared to Bonaire, entirely depending on your flight routing and the specific hotel deals you find. Bonaire wins on pure, uninterrupted dive simplicity. Curacao wins on having massive variety for everyone in the group.
And alternative two is Aruba. Aruba is for the traveler who wants a resort-first, zero-effort, highly managed vacation. Aruba has massive international flight connectivity, which means flights can actually save you $100 to $600 per person right out of the gate compared to Bonaire. It is packed with massive all-inclusive hotel packages. But there is a trade-off. You trade the rugged quiet and the pristine reefs for heavy, intense beach crowds and high-volume tourism.
If we look at the ABC Islands as a spectrum of required effort, it clarifies everything beautifully. Aruba requires absolute zero effort. You show up, you are handed a drink, you sit on the sand, you turn your brain off.
Right.
Curacao requires some moderate effort. You might rent a car for a day or two to explore the western beaches, but you can always fall back on the robust city infrastructure if you get tired. Bonaire requires constant, daily, unyielding logistical management.
Okay, taking all of this in, the massive effort required, the arrival friction, the stidipathies, the high grocery prices, the incredible world-class diving, the sharp iron shore, and the alternatives, we finally reach our destination. The is it worth it matrix. We are going to officially score every single traveler type out of 10. Let's deliver the verdicts.
For the backpacker, the final verdict is a 6 out of 10. It is only worth it if you can secure that rare $50 to $80 room, if you have someone to split the car rental costs with, if you rigorously cook your own meals every day, and if you are using the water every single day.
And if they can't do that?
If you are traveling solo without a car share plan, skip it entirely. You mathematically need a rock-solid $105 to $160 per day because those fixed government fees make ultra-budget survival impossible. If you are a backpacker wanting city variety without needing the reef, go to Curacao.
The mid-range traveler. The verdict is a resounding 8 out of 10. This is the absolute sweet spot of the island. It is deeply, profoundly worth it for a week of quiet shore diving, apartment living, and early nights. Skip it only if you expect big resort service or cheap restaurant hopping. The daily need is $220 to $340 per day. They can afford the logistics without stress, and they reap the immense rewards of the low-cost reef access.
The family verdict is a 6 out of 10. It is worth it if your kids genuinely love the water, love marine animals, and you are all happy with quiet, apartment-style evenings cooking together.
Skip it if.
Skip it immediately if your family relies on structured kids clubs, large sandy resorts, and effortless non-driving days. You need $520 to $780 a day. If you need predictability and ease, Aruba is the much better family choice.
The luxury traveler gets a 7 out of 10. It is worth it for low-key comfort, having a private dive guide, and enjoying massive villa space. Skip it if your personal definition of luxury includes mega pools, designer boutique shopping, and a booming VIP nightlife scene. You need $650 to $1,100 a day to make this work, but be completely aware it will not feel like a sprawling, opulent Caribbean resort.
And finally, the digital nomad. They get a 5 out of 10 for a long stay, but a 7 out of 10 for a short, focused 1-month stay. It's worth it only if you can strictly control your rent and long-term car costs, and your main goal is to use your mornings and evenings for diving.
Right.
Skip it if you need cheap rent, walkable social infrastructure, or public transport to get to co-working spaces. You need $3,000 to $4,800 a month to survive here.
So the overall verdict: book carefully. It's a highly specialist island. It deeply, profoundly rewards the right traveler who does their research. And it emotionally and financially overcharges the wrong one who shows up expecting a generic beach holiday.
And looking at the entire complex structure of Bonaire's tourism model pouring over these audits, it leaves me with one final provocative thought to consider.
Let's hear it.
If a destination legally mandates high financial barriers like a $75 entry tax and a $40 nature fee just to legally step foot in its natural environment, does that successfully protect the fragile ecosystem from the crushing dangers of mass tourism? Or does it merely commodify nature, effectively turning the ocean into an exclusive, pay-to-play country club that is only accessible to the upper middle class?
That is something you really have to ponder as you look at your budget and decide exactly where your hard-earned tourist dollars are going to go this year. If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.